Wow. So here we are. Goodness gracious. It is so much fun to be here. Let's see. I would like to go around and say hi to everybody. Let everybody say a quick hi. But if you're joining us from Highrock now or wherever you're from, welcome. We're so glad to have you here and thank you for joining us. Thank you for stepping in to this space where we can share stories with you. And let you see more about what it's like to be a Black person in America or a Black person in Highrock or whatever would interest you. I'm gonna go around and let everybody say a little word about themselves, but just a little word up front to kind of put parameters around our time. We are so excited to share life with you and share stories with you. So we're going to ask, however, as we share together, that if you identify as a person of color, then we really want to hear from you. We want you to put stuff in the chat, say questions, have discussions among yourselves, whatever in the world. If you identify as a person of color, and you know what that means, and so I don't even need to tell you. You already know what that means, and you know if you identify as a person of color, and if you don't, so don't front. If you don't identify, okay, so the other side. If you do not identify as a person of color, that is, if you're white, then we're going to ask you to step back and just be in a listening mode. You know what I mean? Just to kind of allow this whole conversation to wash over you. You don't need to give voice. You can just relax. You know, during last week's Asian American panel, it was so refreshing for me to just listen and just let these stories impact me, you know, in a way that I think God would be pleased. So we're asking you to do the same. Feel free to, you can like someone else's post, like someone else's comment, respond in that way. But we're asking you to not respond verbally, No words from you, our dear white friends, for tonight. If you're a person of color, however, we want you to take up space, say what you will in the chat, ask questions, engage in this way. Again, we're so happy to be here, and I would like to introduce or let people introduce themselves, everybody who is with us tonight, because it is such a joy. And literally, just check this out. I'm meeting most of these people for the first time, along with many of you. So we're literally getting to know each other in real time. It's amazing. So thank God for this gift of technology. I'm going to look up just around my little screen, and I'm going to ask first if we could hear from Sister Celeste McGee. Tell us about yourself, maybe how long you've been at Highrock, or anything you would have us that would be helpful for us to give context to who you are.
Hi, Tom. Hi, everyone. My name is Celeste McGee. I am on the board of counselors, a counselor at Highrock, have been just since the summer. I am a third grade teacher in Cambridge. I've been at Highrock off and on since about 2009, but have really dug in and become part of the community for the last 2 years. And I'm just really thankful for all of you here to be a part of this conversation, to get to know everyone, and I really am looking forward to listening to the stories that are coming. So thank you.
Very cool. And Celeste gives great comments during the live church services. So, look out for those. I'm just going around my screen. Kennel, you might have to give us the pronunciation of your name and everything, sir.
You said it pretty well. You said, you know what, Tom? You have this natural DJ voice, like you bring in the video. Yeah. I'm just so comforted by your voice.
Hey, be comforted in the Lord. That's good, sir.
My name is Kennel Etienne. I attend Highrock Quincy. I'm part of the Leadership Council. I've been there for, I think, since 2007. I'm also a ninth grade history teacher at Boston Public Schools. And I'm just so honored to be in this space and to have this conversation with you all. So I'm excited.
Wow. Thanks, Kennel. Very cool. Pastor Danny?
Well, good evening, everyone. I think I have pretty much I've met DeAndre, I've met Kelly. Tom, I have engaged in conversation with you before, but this is actually our first time. But one of the things I wanted to share before I introduce myself is when people of color come together, you don't have to know each other.
Isn't that a blessing?
It just becomes like family, just in connection. So I'm excited about this conversation because it's gonna feel like having a family barbecue and just having fun. So playing spades and talking about life, right? That's what it's gonna feel like.
Oh my goodness. Still playing spades.
Yeah, you know.
Right.
I serve on the Revelation 17 for Highrock. And I'm also a pastor at a church that's very, very similar to Highrock. I serve as a pastor of outreach and missions at a church on the West Coast in California, right outside of San Francisco, called Marine Covenant. And I'm just excited to be an extended family member of Highrock.
Amen. Let's go to our own brother, Pastor DeAndre.
What's up, Tom? I tell you, I still agree that you have that radio voice.
Oh, Lord.
I was thinking when Danny said that, Pastor Danny said that about spades. When I learned how to play spades, I felt like my black certification card, which is like,
right.
I'm not seeing the cookouts on the side anymore. I can play. I'm right now.
You're the grown folks table. You can actually
the grown folks table. Yes. I am just excited, thankful to be a part of Highrock. I'm an associate pastor, and I am responsible for the high school students. And I am a Georgia native, so I am thankful to be part of this conversation with my cousins and just all my family. So I'm excited.
It's a blessing. Wow. And finally, last but certainly not least, is the newly tenured. On Dr. Kelly Carter Jackson. Introduce yourself, sister.
Hi, I took off the doctor because I really want to be informal.
But you know, we like to call you Doc.
No,
Dr. Kelly Carter.
I'm Kelly Carter Jackson. I attend Highrock Metro West. We've been going there for about 4 years now. I'm sort of a nomad, so I claim Texas is home. But if you say Illinois, I'm like, that's my home too. If you say Detroit, I'm like, that's my home too. Because I've moved around a lot. But I'm a professor at Wellesley College, and I'm in the Department of Africana Studies, and I'm a historian by training. So I teach all things history. So Canel and I have a lot in common.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Carter Jackson. This is so, honestly, even just seeing y'all's faces in this space and being able to have this conversation, it's emotional for me. Oh Lord, because it feels like it's been a minute. And it's been a year, and it's been a lifetime, and it's been a whole entire thing. So just to be able to have folk to let's just talk it out, and just at least what solidarity, just to know we're together with all of those who are joining us it's just I'm honored to be in y'all's illustrious presence. This is a very cool. Can I add? We're just going to have a free-ranging conversation, and one of the questions I wanted to ask, because oftentimes we're trying to both engage with one another and also educate others just by allowing them to listen. So what was your earliest, whoever can answer first, what was your earliest experience with race as a Black American? I don't know, earliest memories, like when did you know you was Black? Because, you didn't, at some point you realized you Black. So, and that, whatever that means to you, but is there anything, or maybe you didn't. I mean, I don't want to project my own thing, but is there somebody who would share, what was your first experience when you realized that you're in a racialized situation? Do you remember anything like that, even as a child?
I think one of my first times that I realized was when I found out that everybody's grandmother didn't have Ebony and Jet on their coffee table.
The magazines.
That was something that was new to me. I was like, wait, it was in Ebony, it was in Jet. That was one of the good things about going to my grandmother's house. I could look through all of
the little Jet
yes.
magazine. Yeah.
And then there was, I think, Jet Jr. That was like that was really good. But that I'm dating myself now.
Right.
So there are things like that were just kind of sprinkled, like they were always there, and realizing that it wasn't true for other people, little by little. I think, just thinking about Emmett Till, I think not thinking about Jet magazine, because Emmett Till being in Jet magazine, it must have been an anniversary. And I remember seeing that, and that really, I don't have words now. I certainly didn't have words when I was younger to understand just the cruelty and, the savagery just because someone was Black. And then learning more of the story, the fact that the killers went on trial and they got off like that. I just didn't understand that. I remember, again, dating myself, watching Roots on like when it first came on, like when it was the mini series, and seeing the KKK. And I lived in Philadelphia in this apartment complex that had all kinds of people, but just watching that, I just knew that the KKK were going to come burn a cross on my, I was really afraid that the KKK was going to come and burn a cross in front of my apartment. So that was another strange thing, to not understanding, like, why would people do that? But I think where it really came to me was in middle school, that time of like trying to figure out who you are and how you're going to identify and who your friends are and all of that. I think I am very thankful for this, because I had the people's like who would ask me, well, what are you? They would ask, well, oh, look at your hair. They would say, oh, you speak like a white girl. Oh, I mean, there were just so many different experiences that I really struggled through, trying to figure out who I was and who I was going to identify with. But I finally realized that there was something that being Black was, that I really wanted to be Black, because some people, some of the Black friends, students that I went to school with would say, oh, you want to be white. And I really had to like think about myself, because of course, all the positive role models and images were about being white. So it's like, okay, well, does that I could kind of understand that. But really, when I dug down, I was like, you know what? I don't want to be white, because I get to see what life is like on the outside. I get to feel what it is like to be the underdog, or to see what happens. Like, I get to not have privilege. And of course, we didn't have that word then. But not having privilege was a blessing, because I could see things that I realized that my white friends couldn't see. And they were never really going to be able to understand. And it also meant that didn't just have this camaraderie with Black people, but I had it with Asian people. I had it with Hispanic people. Like, it was really a great thing to realize, because from that point on, I didn't struggle inside myself. Now, there's, of course, were certainly times, all kinds of struggles that came from it, but the really rejoicing and being happy with being Black, that was I've already decided that. So that is something that I was very thankful for.
I appreciate that. Anybody else, all of y'all can feel free to unmute and just talk over. It's fine. I would love to. So give me, anybody else have a personal story about when you realized, or when you came to yourself that you're different than the majority of people? I don't know.
No, I think for me, it was kindergarten. And I say kindergarten because I don't think I had a concept, at least at that point, that being Black was either something dysfunctional or black or, you know, like I knew maybe that I was black, but then I realized, oh, this is not a good thing. Like, because I went to all white schools, and when I was in kindergarten, we had to do a game, which I think is kind of jacked up if there's only one if there's only one kid of color in the class, which is we had to all bring in pictures of the day we were born. And then we had to identify, you know, who's Johnny, who's Susie, you know, like, you know, I literally remember trying to find the palest picture of me, like,
so you could kind of be part of the game and trick other people, like a little bit.
Maybe they won't know it's me, you know, like, which is ridiculous. But I remember just wanting to fit in and wanting to not be so easily guessable, I guess, which, you know, I didn't have the language at 5 to articulate that. But the older I got, first grade, I remember vividly, you know, I've told this story a lot, just coloring, you know, white princesses, and my mother being furious with me, like, she's ugly, make her brown. And I would, you know, color her with brown skin and color her with black hair. And she'd be like, oh, she's beautiful. She looks like you. Like, but my mom had to do a lot of work to correct the onslaught of whiteness and beauty politics that was coming toward me. And so I feel like I do have a very good outlook on blackness now. Like, I love it. It's great. But I know that my mom was also, and my father, was very, very intentional about instilling in me a sense of pride. And yes, this is you, and you're great. And those other girls are jealous, you know? But I also knew to some extent that it wasn't that I thought that they were lying. It's just that every single message outside of them ran counter to that narrative. And so I was hyper aware of that.
Well, I wanted to ask that too, you know, because I was born in Kansas City, Missouri, and primarily all black community. But when I was small, I think second grade moved to Colorado Springs, Colorado, where there's like maybe 4 black people. Or 3.5, somewhere in there, like that many black people in the whole, there's more now, but at that time, and I remember walking into the classroom in school, and there was only like 2 black people, and they weren't even sitting together. So my mind said, oh, I didn't know. But Kelly, you had such a strong, you know, your mom's was like woke before it was a thing, you know, to know that she had to be an influence. Anybody want to, how y'all, you know, how were you formed in blackness, you know, positively, negatively? I don't know.
I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead, Kanal. You want to speak?
I don't know. I feel like maybe I'm speaking for myself. I feel like a lot of black people realize they're black more than once, right? In life. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could think back to a couple of times, because originally I was born in Brooklyn, and you know, my family's Haitian, so Brooklyn is predominantly West Indian, whether it's Jamaican or Haitians in there. So, you know, being there, I felt, you know, I felt connected to the culture. You know, hearing the language that was spoken in the street, that was the same language that was being spoken at home, I felt connected. And then we moved to Chelsea when I was Chelsea, Massachusetts, when I was, you know, I was young. I can't remember what age, but Chelsea, Massachusetts is predominantly Hispanic and Latinx. And that's when I realized there was a difference between me and a lot of other people. I grew up Haitian, and growing up Haitian wasn't really cool, right? Back in the 90s, you know, people used to make fun of people from Haiti, or even if you came from like an immigrant, even if you were an immigrant, you weren't really accepted. So that made me realize that I was different. I was black. But the second time I realized was when I was part of a social justice camp, and part of the training, we had to do this thing called a privilege line. And this is where you hold hands with everybody. Everybody starts off in the line in the same space, and you hold hands. And while you're holding hands, a facilitator would ask questions. and depending on if you answer positively, like yes, then you would step forward. If it was negative, no, then you would step back. And a lot of the questions had to do with like privilege and questions like, did you grow up with books in your house? Did you grow up in a house? Things like that.
When was this? This is like recent or no?
But this was, I was probably like in college.
Okay.
Undergraduate. Wow. And the end of the session, I realized that I was way back. My back was touching the wall, and a lot of other people were much further closer to the finish line than I was. And I was like, man, I'm black.
Because you on the wall.
Yeah,
wait, just go back there.
I'm black. So I think to me that tangible thing that I could see how what I look like was affecting my progress, right? Like you never really, as a black person, you don't think that your skin color is really affecting your progress. But I was able to see it, so that's when I realized, yeah.
Huh. Wow.
You're black.
Pastor DeAndre, did I see you? Oh, I'm sorry, Pastor Danny, was you trying to get in?
Well, I mean, but I can, allow my brother DeAndre to speak if he would.
No, you go ahead, Pastor Danny. Yeah, I was giving you.
No, I guess I was just going to say that I totally agree with Kanel when he said that you realize you're black on multiple occasions. That it's not a one-time thing. It's a constant reminder that you're black. And it does have a lot to do with how you can move along the road of being or doing or accessing or obtaining. It's a lot slower. That race is a lot slower, no matter how fast you feel like you're running. Your arms are moving so fast, but yet your legs move like snail. And you're like, why am I not moving as fast as I should? Oh, it's because I'm black.
That's like, oh, amazing.
And I'm on a treadmill.
Right. I'm going as fast as I can. What are you
it's not happening. But you asked the question, how were we formed, in our childhood to understand, race and how it can affect you growing, how it can be affect you, right? And I always say that I was raised by Angela Davis in a suit because my mother was very corporate America, but yet she was also Angela Davis. So I was constantly reminded of my position and how I am to be acknowledged of that, and make sure that you are always this. Make sure you're focused on this. Don't go out there and do something that what she would love to say that, and I'm just gonna say it as plainly and bluntly as she to me. She would say, "Don't do anything where a white man can discriminate against you." That was a phrase that I heard so often growing up. I just don't want you to do something that will allow them to discriminate against you. And that was a part of my rearing. I grew up in Arlington, Texas, which then in the 80s and 90s was a predominantly white community. It has now become a lot more diverse. It's still majority white, but the Latino community is very closely coming to become the majority in that area. But during that time, it was predominantly white. My community, my neighborhood that I lived in was predominantly white. My schools were predominantly white. And I engaged in a lot of conversations that I didn't know at that time. I was defending my blackness. I didn't know that's what I was doing at all. But as I look back, that's exactly what I was doing. I remember having a conversation with a boy about why we needed a Black History Month. And
Lord have mercy.
I mean, it was so, I can remember having that conversation, like, well, why wouldn't we have, what do you mean? Why wouldn't we have a Black History Month? And it was, having a conversation in my English class, why we're reading Huckleberry Finn, why are we reading To Kill a Mockingbird, and blacking out or extracting out the N word, but the white kids laughing because they know what it is and they trying to sneak and say it under their breath, but no one's calling it out. Like those things at high school. It wasn't until I went to an HBCU. I graduated from an HBCU. I graduated from Clark Atlanta University. And I was intentional about moving to Atlanta because I said, I need to be in Black space.
Wow.
I need to be in Black space. I've been in white space for so long that I don't even know what it means to be Black anymore.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I went to Atlanta where I saw Black excellence. I remember calling home to my mom. This is so, to me now, as I think back on it, like, gosh, I can't believe this is what I was impressed by. But I was calling home and I was like, Mom, there are Black people, and then they got a Porsche on you. Mama, she got a Porsche. Mama, it's a Mercedes. Yeah. I was blown away that Black people could have that, could afford those things.
Yeah.
And not have to assimilate into white culture in order to afford those things.
Wow.
And it was, it definitely was more of a culture shock being in Black space.
Yeah. Pastor DeAndre, you grew up in Georgia. Is any of this familiar, or maybe you was in a different part? You know what I'm saying?
Different part. Didn't matter I was Black at all. No, but I think I first agreed with Canel that there's just so many of these moments where we realize that we are Black. And I think for me, like I growing up in Georgia, it was almost like I always knew I was Black. There were moments though when I started to realize that it mattered that I was Black. So like especially, and even like kind of going to the complete opposite of the end as Danny, I went into predominantly white at academic spaces. And it wasn't until my first encounter in undergrad, I remember I went with some friends and we were going out to play soccer. And it was myself and another person of color who was African. And I remember the sun going down and we were out playing soccer in the field. And this little 8-9-year-old little white kid, he comes and he puts a chain around my ankles. And I mean, I will never forget I'm looking around and people are, they're finding this comical. Me and the Black kid, we're outnumbered. He's off in the other field. It's gotten dark, so I really don't know where he is. And I remember just praying to God, like, Lord, if you get my Black, you know what, out of here. I myself situation again. But then it wasn't until I went off to do graduate work where I started just becoming aware of Black consciousness and messages that whiteness had deemed as inappropriate. And so things from just like falsely critiquing rap music and falsely critiquing how Black males dressed and, how Black females were carrying themselves and language that we would hear like falsely from the pulpit. I like really found myself like saying, oh man, like I've been operating out of this the wrong way and appropriating to what I've eventually learned as respectability. And that was just the big awakening moment for me, was just navigating those. I mean, because I was one of the few that, I had Black educators in my in elementary and, high school. It was higher ed where I started like that was where it was new to me to like not have the black principal that called me Brother Dukes and would, you know, be on the phone with my big mama and cuss about my behavior in school. So it was, I couldn't go home and tell mom that she had cussed me because mom and her are on the phone cussing about my behavior. So, but yeah, it was, I mean, higher ed was where I really started to see like, oh, I don't have any teachers that look like me or administrators that look like me, or I started analyzing curriculum and it leaving me out. And so it was just those moments of realizing that my blackness matters, and not in the way that we proclaim that it matters now.
Right. Yeah. Man, Dr. Jackson, you want to get in? Did you have anything?
I just, man, it just makes me a little sad because it's like, the commonality, the common threads that we have of feeling like outsiders, like Black people can never just be and belong. You know what I mean? It's always got to be an explanation for our existence, an explanation for our excellence, an explanation for our citizenship, you know, and it just makes me sad. But I also know that it's just too common. It's just too common.
You know, Canel had that word, man. Actually, that's the word of how we repeatedly find out. Like, in case you forgot, you're Black. So
yes.
In case it ever leaves your consciousness.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Canel.
No, I agree with you.
No, so we know people from our beloved church are watching. So we're gonna just try to keep it very real. When I first led worship, okay, I'm gonna get secret. I'm gonna whisper. So when I first, this is just between us, and we, you know, people looking. That's fine. So when I first led worship at Highrock, back in the day, so this is like 2013 or so, right? It was the first time, and I was honored to be there, and so on. And, you know, and we had 2 services, Sunday services at that time in the morning, like kind of like we still do now. After the first service, led the worship. We had a wonderful time and so on. Go down to the coffee hour, you know, to get a cup of coffee, whatever, but before the next service. And Brother Mark Bray, who I don't know if many people know him. He's, you know, like more buff than me. He's bald shaved. He does wear glasses. He came up to me and he said, Tom, people have just been congratulating me about how wonderful the worship was this morning and thanking me, you know, for my leadership. I said, oh, well, isn't that okay? You know, and we had a laugh because if y'all know, anybody knows Mark Bray knows he looks nothing like me, except he is Black. So that was funny. Danny, I think Pastor Danny just got it. So, so I thought that was like trippy. And of course I got to lead the next service. Now I thought it was almost, but then I go up at that time, we also had a 5 o'clock evening service in Cambridge. And so, you know, the way we'd organize things, I was leading worship there that night. And as I walked in, you know, to get things set up and start leading, Brother Ellery, another, he would attend the Cambridge service. He came up to me, he said, Tom, people are just so amazed at how well I led worship this morning. And they're just looking forward to, you know, they heard about it from their friends and and he didn't know what they were talking about when they told him. So you're reminded, you know, like Canel said that, okay. Or like Dr. Carter Jackson said, you know, I'm different, radically different, and so different that you know, we joked around with the 3 of us. We said, you know what, we should all go to church in the same service and like all stand up and like, you know, flip people out like the Matrix broke, like they could see 3.
You're not right. You're not right.
You know, but it's, you know, I continued reading, continued reflecting and realizing this is what it is. You know, when we're coming into spaces where we're trying to be together. We're trying to be ourselves in a space that we're not, where there ain't no more Black people. This is the kinds of pains that we have to go through. And that goes for all peoples of color, likely, but that's just was my experience. What can I
just want to add to that, because it's like, you spend 6 days out of the week, right? Defending your Blackness, having to just like always gear up, right, for the world. And it gets tiring. And church is supposed to be the space of respite, right? Where we can come in and just re-energize, recharge, to go back out into the world and do it all over again. And then to come into a space and then having to do that in that space, it gets tiring. It gets real tiring.
But Kanel, can I just say that though, what you're speaking to is the Black culture church experience, or the Black church experience, that when we go to church, that's our place to relax, to rest, to receive. With family now, I can just be myself.
Yeah.
And what happens is when you do bring that into, majority white church space, you don't get that because that's not the culture there. And I think that adds another layer of tension, another layer of challenge and exhaustion, because you're going hoping to receive this.
Mm-hmm.
In our upbringing, we didn't realize that was a Black church thing or a Black culture thing. We thought that was a church thing.
Yeah.
That was a Christian thing.
But
when we go into non-Black churches, or churches that are not fully accepting of all ethnicities and them bringing their whole selves and their background, you don't experience that, because you are now othered. You are now looked at as Black, different, but the same. Tom, that story burned my heart, because like, I'm Black, yes, but now you basically saying we all look the same too? Like, did you even look at my face while I was leading worship?
But you know what, Pastor Daddy? I mean, amazing. And see, this is the grace of God. I'm not trying to, tell on people. but we have to tell the truth. So after that experience in the morning, of course, I had to come up and lead the second service. And I was still so wrought up by just that fact of like, oh Lord, I'm just trying. But then it occurred to me in that moment, by the grace of God, as I looked out, Highrock, Arlington has a large, is predominantly white and Asian. And as I looked, I realized, you know what? And I even told some of the band members who I thought could understand. I understand people making that mistake because I'm making it right now. Because I too, I can't distinguish all my Asian brothers and sisters. I don't know. And it was only just later, like in recent years, that I read some research where they talked about babies, small people, we're formed to distinguish the faces of people closest to us in our tribe, and everybody outside that tribe is just a faceless other. And then my Christian sense says, okay, I need to just expand my circle of familiarity. And until I do that, I'm not going to be able to tell people apart or this, because my brain is formed to just distinguish those close to me. So that gave me grace. Like, okay, these folks just ain't never seen no Black people, or they did, but they forgot or something. And so, let's all just try to, continue, and I'll show my face again. And
but can I ask a question? Because I think that the ways that we are sometimes programmed to not see other people of color, or to see other people of color as a block, but yet white people are individuals. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I know Karen, I know Susie, I know Tommy. Like, no one's like, oh, Bob, no, Sean, no, Keith. Like,
You're right. You're right.
I feel like that the power of whiteness is recognition of your individual identity, that they don't necessarily have someone coming up to them saying, remind me, it's one thing to generally forget someone's name. It's another thing to confuse, him or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's different. But I think we've all been programmed not to see. And when I say this, and I'm not saying I don't see color, like we don't see ethnicity, but we've been trained not to pay attention to things that are not white, because whiteness is the standard. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
That whiteness is the norm. So white people don't have to identify themselves. But Tom, you gotta let us know who you are. You know what I mean? No, you got Celeste. Who are you? Right? We always have to identify ourselves or establish our uniqueness in order to be seen. That's what's part of the problem. We do it to all of each other, but I don't think that we do this in the same way with white people.
Wow.
No, yeah, that was, when I heard you say that, it reminded me of a particular incident we had that happened at Duke. And there were about 5 to 6 students of the Black Student Union. They were in one of the lecture halls and they were praying, and they'd gone a few minutes over their time. And the white professor came in, slammed his books down on the table, and decided he was going to start, that it was his time to be in that space. And so when they brought it up, he challenged them and said, I didn't see you. And they brought that up, that was the issue of the ability and the privilege to be able to look past Blackness, to not see us occupying a space, or the student could walk into the president's office and, ask to speak to the president, a white student, and there was never a question. But a student of color comes into the office and the first question is, are you a student here? And so those, distinctions there, like, and I think Black people experience that on a day-to-day basis. And like you said, if you don't identify who you are, well, either you don't get seen or you might be lucky if you leave that space alive. And so this constant need to identify yourself when you walk into a space where white is the norm.
And see, this is why we some folk will ask me, or especially, non-Black people, why don't you just show the police your ID? Just, they're just asking. No, they're not just, there's something on it that's wrong. And I don't know. I wanted to ask y'all, because, this has been a year, and with the murder of George Floyd, whose trial is today, and so on, it kind of sparked this most in a flashpoint way, this most recent iteration of consciousness raising. I don't know what you want to call it, Dr. Jackson. This kind of thing. Is there? I wanted to ask y'all: did that do anything in terms of? Was that a seminal moment for any of you? Did it change anything in terms of your understanding of yourself as a Black person, or your engagement with the world? Or Celeste, go ahead.
Yeah, so again, thinking about that image of Emmett Till that I saw so long ago, that to me, anytime I see these, that's the, my mind always goes back to that.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
So there was a New Yorker cartoon that I think came out maybe within a couple of weeks of George Floyd's murder. And it was, it made me laugh. I put it up because I'm really bad. Like, I can remember lots and lots of movie quotes or whatever, but I can never do it verbatim. So I have all my evidence like right here. So I have it on my other screen. And it's a picture of it's a drawing of two Black women, and one woman is writing is making a Black Lives Matter sign, and her cell phone is going off, and she tells the other woman, just ignore it. My white friends keep checking in on me because they think racism is new. And that just so encapsulated how I felt, because there was this part of me that's just looking around at the hysteria that's happening. And I'm thinking, why are y'all so like, why is this such, I mean, aside from, of course, it was a horrific thing, but just why is everybody so surprised? Why is this such a big, like, why is this such a big deal? And there are reasons why it is, but, but because I mean, that exact thing happened. I have lots and a very diverse group of friends, but a lot of my white friends were checking in on me. And a couple of my white friends who I haven't heard from in a really long time were checking in on me like, yeah, how you doing? I'm like, I'm fine. You know, it's like nothing's changed for me. This is the same America that it was, you know, earlier. So, and there's something, I mean, there's something so wrong about that, like that I even didn't want to like share it. But it really, that was like my, you know, it wrenches my heart, you know, like seeing that. And I only watched it one time, just like seeing that image so long ago. But then there's a part of me that just, I'm just weary of it. And I'm just kind of numb to it.
Yeah. Anybody else have any word on that? Go ahead, Kanal.
I'm actually currently creating a lesson connecting the Emmett Till, having Emmett Till to George Floyd.
Wow.
In those parallels. But for me, it was, you know, again, it's nothing new. So we've seen this over and over again. But what was different for me this time with the murder of George Floyd, I have a 13-year-old son. He's 13 now. At the time, he was 12. And I have a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And this time, I'm a parent, right? I'm a father. And now I have to explain to my 12-year-old son what this is. And not having the words, not knowing how to explain that you are reaching the age, you're about to be a teenager. You're reaching the age where you're no longer going to be seen the way we see you, as fun-loving, smart, beautiful young man. You're now going to be that laughter that you have, that joyous laughter, might be seen as a threat in certain situations, right? How do I explain to him that this country or certain people will not love you and accept you, not because of anything that you do, not because of your character, but because you just showed up, that you're just here. And that was the difficult part for me during the George Floyd situation. Was as a man, it destroyed me, right? Because my job as a man, as a husband, is to protect and provide, right? That's how I see myself. This is how I've stepped into this role as a protector and a provider, and I can't protect him against what's out there, right? And wow. that crushed me. Like it really hurt me during that time.
Can I want to say something that I don't want to be like a wet blanket, but like
no.
I feel like so we've all been here before with Tamir Rice, with Mike Brown, with Eric Garner, with Trayvon Martin, with Breonna Taylor, like, you know, Sandra Bland. The list goes on and on and on and on. And we don't, and that's in the like last 5.
Right. That's like, yeah.
So, you know, this is not Rodney King or Amadou Diallo or, you know, all of the shootings that marked me in the early 2000s, 90s, even 80s to some extent through my parents. You know, my mom always taught me about how she had nightmares through Emmett Till's image. But what I will say about the thing that I just want to say 2 things about George Floyd. I think one, I'm always correcting people. So I'm like, it's not the George Floyd trial. George Floyd is dead. This is the Derek Chauvin trial. Like, Derek Chauvin did this.
Right.
Because I think that, it should not be about George Floyd. This should absolutely be about Derek Chauvin and his monstrous act. And then the second thing is, when all the protest things were happening, like, I got bummed because I felt like a lot of it got corporatized. A lot of it became for the gram. A lot of it became performative. A lot of it was this Amazon presents Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? Find the friendly skies with Delta, who loves Black lives. Like, I was like, the moment corporate capitalism has taken over and made it a hashtag, the movement's dead, right? Like, I felt less hope because I felt like protest movements became a trend. They became like going out to protest, right? Like, and I didn't go to a single protest, not a single protest. And I've been shocked to say that initially it was like I just had a baby. Initially it was like COVID. Initially I felt like I had legitimate reasons, but then I couldn't attend from a space where I felt like it was authentic because I knew it wasn't new. Does that make sense? Like, and I felt like I didn't want to have a picture taken or to have check here or present in a way that felt like, so now I did the work, because that's not marches aren't solutions. I don't know. I've still been struggling with cynicism. I know we all know how these trials go. We all know, friends. We all know the outcome. We all know when they start putting the barricades up around the courthouse before they announce. Like,
right.
And that is just, I can't get around without Christ. I can't get around that cynicism, and that's it's not shock. It's sadness.
Yeah, I hear that. If there's no, when it first, I was literally reflecting when George Floyd was murdered. I was still reflecting on what had happened, I think just a week before or something, with Christian Cooper being threatened in the park in New York. What is wrong? And then this happened, and I was like, well, what the? And so I was so frustrated. Like, this is, I don't know, Dr. Carter Jackson. I think soon it changed me in the sense of like, okay, I'm done. I'm pissed in a way that I was, because now it's visceral. Now it's much more now because of the, and I didn't watch the video, still haven't, because I just can't. I just can't. But the fact I got a little bit of hope, because I thought, because everything y'all are saying is right, at least it resonates with me, that this is nothing new. This is not the only thing made it. I was like, okay, now surely, like when Dr. King did the march and they had the hoses on, and the country saw the brutality on their TV screens, I thought, okay, well, maybe now this time, because everybody can see the stuff that happens usually off camera. Now everybody can see. So I thought maybe finally white people, anybody of any decent goodwill has to see that these things that we've been suffering this hell for a very long time, and it needs to stop. Right? And we need to start actively doing those things to make it stop. And I don't know, I hear you. I'm cynical too. Me and Trey, my son, we always look and say, okay, look and see the little mixed race people in the commercial. It's become a thing now. But I guess, I don't know. I'd rather wokeness be cool. I'd rather people think that Black people are cool than to think that we're threats. And maybe those are two sides of the same coin. And actually, I don't know.
I think I want to put on my Christian hat for a moment.
You never took it off. You never took it off.
No, you're right. You're right. But I think to add on to my this is nothing new. That one of the like the first church that I really started like studying the Bible and really getting into scripture was a Reformed church. So you get all the, Reformed doctrine, and I was like steeped in it. And one of the the fact that we're desperately like the depravity of the human heart, who can know it? To me, that's what, in a weird way, doesn't give me hope, but it explains what's going on. Because apart from Christ, what else do we expect? Like, this is exactly the way the world is. And, like I said earlier, I am Black. I love being Black. I will be Black to the day I die. But if Black people were white people and white people were Black people, we'd be doing the same thing. And that's not because, that's because the human heart is desperately wicked apart from Christ. So, because I mean, and like kind of turning it a little bit, when Barack Obama won the presidency, I was so happy because he was like, I loved him, like not because he was Black, but because I loved him. Like I thought he was incredible. But when I saw how Black people were like this, not all Black people, of course, but how lots of Black people were like, we have arrived. This, this is our time. I'm like, y'all don't know what's going to happen. Because I saw it coming. Like, I mean, I couldn't have seen Donald Trump, but I was like, people are not going to be happy about this. And this, we have not gotten to the mountaintop. I mean, I just saw it happen. And it was, I was like, it's Barack Obama's fault that Trump got elected. I mean, in some weird way, because of the fact that was the backlash. So I'm all around the planet on this, but I think like it's really important for me as to be a Black person and a Christian person, but really if I'm going to choose like that Christian, like Christ and by the Bible explaining what the human condition is what helps me survive the desperately wicked, sinful world that we find ourselves in. And then the hope that one day it's all, he's going to redeem it all. Keeps me like feeling not desperately upset when these horrible things happen.
Pastor DeAndre, you wanted to get a word, sir?
Yeah, I guess that what Celeste said, what scares me is there's this expectation of Blackness to choose if we're going to be Black or Christian. And that in order for me to be Christian, I have to deny my need to be human, my need for my dignity to be honored and recognized. Right. And especially when it comes to the use and the abuse of grace and forgiveness. And I think I remember one of my professors, Dr. Cameron Carter, said when the Gene Botham case and things were going on, and he made a comment because people were just, applauding this young man for extending forgiveness. And one of the comments that he made, he said that forgiveness cannot be present where repentance is absent. And so when I think about these things, I mean, even when this stuff happened with George Floyd and stuff, I was one that, just said, like, again, this isn't anything new for us. And I know someone made the comment of, well, what does solidarity look like for us? Solidarity looks like that even when it is not broadcasted on TV, that you care about my identity and my dignity, and that you speak up before the world sees it. That solidarity is, even when I'm not in the room, you defend Blackness. That even when that Black people should not be the ones on the lines protesting for our human dignity, but I need my white brothers and my Asian brothers and my Hispanic brothers and sisters to be standing on the margins saying that how we've treated this community of people is not right. And so my fear now is, Blackness is cool, but every trend wears out. And what happens when Black is not cool anymore, when it doesn't pay to have Black people in your space anymore, or to have mixed kids in commercials now, or when, homosexuality is not causing corporations to make big bucks and et cetera. So we no longer need to advocate for their humanity. Like that's what I spend most of my nights wrestling with now. What happens when my identity and my dignity is not cool anymore? Do we go back to the way things were before, or even worse, do things become worse for me? I mean, they just passed a bill in Georgia that suppressed voting. And I mean, a senator gets hauled out in handcuffs because she's knocking on the door for a bill that should be made public, and she's locked away. And it's like it's exhausting. And I think that's, even just to circle back to that original question and that statement that was made earlier, this era has made me realize more than anything the significance and the value of the Black church. Amen. And what it is that even in the absence of quote unquote orthodoxical liturgy, that the Black church has a liturgical expression. And if it has not ever done anything right, regardless if its theology was wrong, it did one thing right, and it humanized Blackness. It was a safe space for Black people to be authentically themselves. And it's something about that. And I mean, and I just think we have to, even when we talk about churches that are pursuing these multicultural spaces, it has to be a space that is created for Blackness in its entirety to be welcome, and that we don't compartmentalize that. And so if there's anything that we preach, I definitely want to be someone that advocates and says that you don't have to choose between your Blackness and your Christian identity, that it is because you have fully embraced your Blackness, you're able to live out of what it means to authentically be Christian.
Amen. Amen. Y'all kind of put through the wet blanket, because I was going to ride this Blackness cool thing till death, because I'm older than y'all. I figured, like, cool, I'll just go on into heaven being cool, but y'all just.
But Tom, it's only cool until it's not anymore.
But see, I thought I'd be dead. And then y'all, that's what I'm saying, is I'd be like, I'm gone, and then y'all can take care of it. I'd be on with the Lord.
That's funny.
But I'm still hopeful. I appreciate DeAndre's point, Pastor Danny, that Blackness comes out of Black people, but Blackness is bigger than Black. It's about anti-whiteness. And by that, of course, I know you all know, we don't mean white people. It's not about, there's a mentality of domination and separation, and thinking oneself better than others, that I feel like that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about I'm being anti-white, because that's what's founded this country, is that type of mentality that we, whoever the we is, I mean, Celeste is right. It's not exactly about the skin color, but in this country, it is about it always has been about the skin color. And so, but I want that to be gone. And so I'm hoping Blackness, or anti-whiteness, in terms of, again, not white people, but this ethic, I'm hoping that Blackness will take over the entire church should be the Black church. What Pastor Danny was so eloquent to talk about, the experience of the Black church that has been present there, that there was a sense of safety, a sense of home, a sense of family. That's what the whole church is supposed to be. I'm not ready to. I'm not ready to say that just happened that did happen because of our historical situation, but that's the gospel. So Yeah, no. I want the entire church, and I can't rest until it's that way. Anyway, that's me.
But
Go ahead,
Yeah.
Pastor Danny. Let Pastor Danny get on in there.
and I say that it's interesting that when those that are watching, if you've ever attended a Black church before and you're white, how quickly you are embraced.
And easy, like, come on, baby.
Like,
hey, you need some melanin, but that's okay. Come on.
You are
Yeah.
family. Like you. Oh, let me. First of all, if you ever, those have experienced a Black church, when the ushers usher you to the front row, that means you special. Like, oh, you know. And so you think of like the front row, you sitting up there right in front of the preacher. Oh, you somebody.
Honor.
And that's what. And it's but when a white person comes to a Black church, they immediately get ushered to the front row because of, oh, we value your presence.
Right.
We value your willingness to come and share in our worship. And for that, we're grateful, and let us show as much hospitality as we can. But when it's the flip side, it's almost like, was I not supposed to come? Did I not be here? Was this a special Sunday that I didn't know about? Like, it comes across like that, because it's like, oh, why would you want to be here? Why did you choose here? It's it is how you think about the gospel, how Jesus accepted the other. He embraced the other. He loved the other. When everyone else was like, why are you hanging with tax collectors? Why are you hanging with prostitutes? We don't do that. And Jesus is like, why don't we do that? They have as much right to the kingdom of God as you do. And matter of fact, blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are, like you actually have it twisted.
It's so funny how everything you're saying, Danny, is reminding me of Charleston, because when Dylan Roof walked into that church, they embraced him.
Yes.
They welcomed him. They made him feel special. And even before he went on this murderous rampage, he acknowledged, you people are really nice. You people are really nice. Before he murdered all of them. And that, and I just, it makes no sense, because never have you ever heard of a white person heard of a Black person killing 4 little girls in a white church, setting up a bomb and killing 4 little girls in a white church. Never have you ever heard of a Black person go into a white church and shoot up everyone after they had been welcomed. That the narrative of violence is a one-way street. And I get so angry because Black people are always pushed to forgive the moment that act happens. But when we show up in spaces and we've caused no harm, our very existence is the threat. Our very existence is the crime. Our very existence is terrifying. And has to be explained. I'm sure we've all had to code switch, let folks know where you work, let folks know you're a mom, let folks know you're I'm not a threat. We've all had to pivot in ways to make white people feel comfortable with our identity. But the reality is racial violence is almost always a one-way street.
What's crazy about that is that they call it, I took an implicit bias test having to do with race or something of that nature. And in that test, it said that I was biased against Black people. And I was like, what? I was like, yeah,
your test is whack. What's wrong with your test?
This test is whack. But then I how can I, as a Black person, be biased against myself? And then I started to, think about it and reflect. And, whenever I would travel, right, if I'm going to a party, right, for example, Saturday night, we're going to a party that's in a predominantly black neighborhood, I made sure I carried a weapon on me, a knife, something that, if something would have happened, I could protect myself. But if I was going to a party in a predominantly white neighborhood, if I bought a weapon, if I forgot it at home, whatever, I'm safe, right? So I too inherited that imagery or that message of I'm the dangerous one, right? And I was projecting it back to everybody who looked like me, and that took some like a lot of unlearning and all of that. That you guys are crazy in the chat, by the way. Happening in the chat, but you guys are hilarious. Anyways, I had to really unlearn a lot of things and untrain my mind from the onslaught of messages and imagery that I was dangerous. It took a while.
But you know what, Canel, and like you said before, brother, that even as we're trying to unlearn that about ourselves, the message still comes from the other, right? It's crazy. So it's like this constant, So after church one time, I'm gonna whisper again. So after church one time at Highrock, went with a friend, from church. Let's go to lunch. Okay, so we're going down to lunch from church. Sit next to each other in the pew, and here we go to lunch. Young Asian person, right? So we go on to lunch, and we decided to go to this one restaurant that was like a couple of miles away. So we drove. And then as we were coming back to bring her back to her car at the church so she can go, the rainstorm was hitting really heavy. And her phone was blowing up from older housemates in her space. And we're driving along and I was like, wow, your phone's blowing up. They must really be concerned. She was like, yeah. I said, I guess because it's so rainy out here, they probably want to make sure you're okay, because of flooding and everything. And she said, oh no, it's just because you're black. And I was like, what? So on so many levels, I was like, what? Y'all, what? Everybody knows me. Like, these people know me. What? And so that, and then my friend who didn't have the presence of mind to censor her other friend, she just kind of busted out and said, oh, it's because you're black. Like, oh, Lord.
Was it a joke, Tom?
No, she was dead serious. And in fact, it disturbed. I didn't let on at the time how disturbed I was because I'm just trying to make peace as we do. But it was some weeks later that I was reflecting. I was like, I think there's something here that could be insightful. We need to talk about these things. I can't continue to bottle this. And so I actually called her and I said, I would like to write up this is what happened. And I'm going to write something and I want you to read it. And if you're okay with me sharing it anonymously, I would like to write this up and post it on my social media. I sent it to her. She said, yep, that's what's happened. That is what happened. I am so sorry. I get what you're saying and I'm so sorry. And yes, you should. I think it's instructive. This is a person trying to wake up to their own anti-blackness and that of her near community. So all that to say, like Brother Cannell was saying, we're reminded all the time that we have to defend that we're not dangerous. We have to say to ourselves, I'm not dangerous. I'm not dangerous. And even when you try to say that to yourself, there's other people saying the other.
I have 3 sons, and they're biracial, but they're now in their 20s. And we lived when they were in middle school to high school, we lived in a predominantly white town. There would be times where I would go to the Starbucks and I'd hang out there because I love just hanging out. And I would be reading. I'd look up and I would see a bunch of people looking at me. And I'm like, why? What's going on? And they're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm black. Because I would forget, oh, that's it's because they're and people I would say that to a white friend, and they're like, well, how do you know that? I was like, if I'm the only one there and they're looking at me like, what else could it be? Like I mean, that's the conclusion I'm going to draw. But like you're saying, it's my personality. It's the culture, it's like to make people comfortable, to see me as not a threat, I do all those things that you do. And, I don't think much of it. Like it's just what you do. But there's a CVS across the street. And one of my sons was across the street, and he texted me, he said, I'm across the street getting whatever. So I was like, okay, I'll meet you over there. So I go in, and I can see on his face, he's really like upset. I'm like, what's wrong? And he said, the manager yelled at me. I'm like, well, why did she yell at you? He said, because she said that I was stealing something. And so I thought for a moment. I was like, so when it's me, I'm like, yeah, just let it go. But the moment you start messing with my kid, that's a whole different story. And so I'm thinking, so I go to her and I say, what happened? Like, what's going on? She's like, and, she explained it. I said, well, did you ask him? Like, did you, and, I was like, well, here's the thing. If he ever comes back into this, store, I was like, I know that he didn't do it. And it's not just because I'm his mom and I agree with him. I was like, because if he did do it, he'd know he had to come home to me.
Right. Oh yeah, no, he'd help to pay. So.
And that's why he wouldn't do it. Or if he did do it, he'd know he'd have to come home to me.
Right.
So,
right.
It was just, but I knew that it was because I knew he didn't do it. Like, that's the thing. It's like, I knew he didn't do it, but because of just who he was walking around, and I'm talking like, he's this like biracial kid. So he doesn't necessarily, he's not it doesn't make him any better or anything like that. But phenotypically, there's like this, wondering, but it didn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It didn't matter.
You're just black still.
Right.
That's how they do.
So what you're sharing reminds me of my husband and I's first week at our church. And like I told you all, our church is very similar to Highrock. The church that I serve in is predominantly white. It is highly affluent. A lot of people have really high positions at their companies and things like that. And so one of the ways that one of the families wanted to welcome my husband and I, they wanted to invite us to the San Francisco Giants baseball game and to experience it in their box. And so my husband like, oh, wow, okay, cool. That's awesome. We've never been in any box seats before. That sounds cool. And so they give us the tickets. They give us the parking passes, and immediately, the time of the few days prior, another family had allowed us to sit in their reserved seats. So we were like, okay, cool, two games in a row. This is gonna be interesting. So as we drive in and we pull into the parking space, we're immediately like, oh, can I check your tickets? That's understandable, right? And it's like, sure, check out things. Like, okay, you can park here. So we come out and we're looking like, where do we go to the box seats? Because there's no like real sign. And so we go and ask someone and they say, oh, those are box seats. You're supposed to be over there. Like, oh, okay, great. So me and my husband, we walk up, we're all excited. And there was an African American ticket taker. So my husband, we walk in, my husband walks in and his belt goes off. This is the funny part. And he goes off, he's like, oh, your belt. My husband's like, oh, it must be my belt. And the black man said, it's okay. You got privilege today. And we were like, okay.
Wait.
And we were like, okay, we'll take it. So my husband didn't have to take his belt off. He's like, you're good. And so we walk on in And we go into the private elevator, and the lady who's also African American. She's the elevator attendant. She's looking, she's smiling. She said, "Y'all all right today?" I mean, it's almost like
you feel good watching you. They're like, wow, moving on up.
Right, like it's like a celebration, like wow, look at that. Okay, okay, you know. And so me and my husband are like, this is a really interesting experience. And so we walk in, and so now we have our tickets, and we're looking for the box number that's connected to our ticket. So we're looking, and we're like, oh, there it is. And so we walk in, and when we walk in, we are immediately greeted by two women. And one woman says, "Oh, hi, can I help you?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah. Is this box 20? She said, "It is. Do you need something?" And
oh my God.
I said, so I'm looking at my husband looking at the ticket. And
you got the ticket. You got the ticket in your hand, showing him the ticket.
Like I'm trying to see. And then I said, is and I mentioned the woman's name. I said, "Is this the box for such and such?" She was like, "It is." And then before I could say the next thing, that the person who invited us, they stand up, they said, "Oh, Pastor Danny, you're here. Come on." And the lady was like, and then she comes over, she's like, "This is the pastor I was telling you about. This is our new pastor." And she said, "Oh, you're the new pastor." And I said, "Is there a restroom near here?" And then they said, "Yeah, it's one right outside the door." And my husband's like, "Yeah, I need to go to the restroom too." So we go together, and then before I could say something, it's like we just kind of understood what just took place there. It's like, so because we were, is it because that had to be because we Black? What reason would you have questioned us and our place and wondering why we here? And and the phrase of, "Oh, you're the pastor," it was like insult to injury. And I hate to say it, I think the hard part for me was that the person who was questioning our place there wasn't the white woman. It was an Asian woman. And I felt hurt because in my heart, I'm like, out of all people, you should understand.
Yes.
You should understand what it's like to have to be questioned why you're here. But you're questioning me too. I think that is the struggle.
That's what makes because you felt like you could kind of we expect something from other people of color.
Mm-hmm.
We expect a certain awareness, a solidarity, or I don't know. You know, we're coming up on our time, and it seems like it would be good to ask ourselves, because all of us on this call have, for various reasons, you know, have chosen to make this church, or a church like this church, in Pastor Danny's case, our home. We're here, and so because we believe somehow, because we're Christians, that the Lord has led us here for this time. And so since we're here, I know folk would want to know, what could Highrock as a community, what could this church do to make all of us feel more at home here? Is there something missing that could be added? Is there something not being done that could be done that would help us, you know, as a representative sample of Black America or whatever, that would help you as a Black person feel more at home here? You know, if anybody has anything that Spirit would give you to share.
I think one of the big things is to have courage, because you're going to get stuff wrong. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to step on some toes. You're going to look stupid. to one, know that that's going to happen, and be prepared to be humbled and say, look, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Tell me more about that. Tell me why that was insulting to you. What could I have said, that wouldn't be that way? I think that's the key, because I know as a person who hates to get stuff wrong, I will run the other way if I feel like I'm going to be uncomfortable or if I might get it wrong. So I know that I'm not asking something that's easy of people. And particularly in this day and time, it's going to be really hard. But I think that my biggest encouragement would just to be take heart, take Jesus into the situation, and just be courageous.
Be strong and courageous. Amen. Amen. Anybody else have something, a nugget of wisdom we might share, or just something from your heart, a feeling, Dr. Carter Jackson?
Yeah, I've attended Black churches almost all of my life. And it hasn't been maybe until the last probably 10 years that I've geography has placed us in really white spaces, and so a Black church wasn't always an option when you live in North Dakota, as I did.
There's like 2 Black people there.
So, but we went to churches in Brooklyn that were pretty diverse, and we came to Highrock because the day that we showed up, Pastor Dave was giving a sermon, and this was 4 years ago. It was in Arlington, and he talked about racism, and he talked about white privilege, and he talked about, I can't remember like sort of the general message. Sorry, Dave. But I just remember him saying, him calling out like sort of the racism of the church, and like the church has to do better. And like, when we align ourselves with like some of these conservative, really racist, white supremacist ideas that we see dominating so much of the evangelical church, like we need to push back on that. And I told my husband, I said, I've never been in a church where they have like called that out or said that this is bad, or, really had a discussion that went above some sort of platitude. You know what I mean? And so we've been going ever since, and we've always felt welcomed, embraced. But if I'm honest, my fear is not now. My fear is like 5-10 years from now, because right now my kids are 6, 4, and 12 months old. So they're young and they're cute. But when they're 17 and 14 and 12, will they still be embraced in that way? We are predominantly here because of how we get fed, but we're also at Highrock because of how our children get fed and how our children get seen. And I think that if we're honest, like it's easy to be kind to kids, but the moment they start to grow up and stretch themselves and become more into their, identity in adulthood, that is when, it's a fine line between being a cute little Black boy and being Tamir Rice. It's a fine line. And I don't want to have them feel like when they're in middle school, when they're in high school, no one's inviting them to the party. No one wants them to come over. Don't date my daughter. You may not say it, but you think it. Those sentiments and ideas that shift when you're competing for college slots, you're competing for, I don't know, cheer team. I don't know.
Sure.
Like, those are the things that I think about down the line. Will Highrock still be a good fit for my Black teenage children? And I want to be able to say yes. Right now, the answer is yes. But we have to keep doing this work. We can't let it be a seasonal thing or a checked box or a one-off. It has to be daily.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Thank you all so much for sharing these things. I resonate, Dr. Carter Jackson, of that. My goodness, will your children you know, a lot of people meet their spouses at church, or, you know, not to say it has to be that way, but that's a lot of the thing. If that's sort of implicit, if that's deep-seated racism is not gotten over, then Highrock, unless the Lord changes the demographic of it, which he can, and we trust. These are deep things. I appreciate that. I resonate with that concern. Unless anyone else has something to offer in that way, we have to wrap up. But I'm going to pray that we can have these kinds of forums again. I think it's necessary, not only as for us ourselves, but for those who graciously, we're not looking at other people's chat, but those who have joined us to listen into this. So thank you all. Thank you, Celeste, Canal, Pastor Danny, Pastor DeAndre, Professor Carter Jackson. Thank you all so much for being here. And God bless you. I don't want to stop talking, but we're going to stop talking because at 9:30, people got to go to bed and got to work, and we got time for all that. So
thank you, everyone.
God bless you. Have a good night, you all.